Farm Week is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, the USDA says food prices are inching up, but not as fast as many expected. Meat, however, is still high.
You'll also go to Livestock Judging Summer Camp at Mississippi State University. There's more to it than just hanging out in the barns.
In southern gardening, SunPatiens, they're bred to grow and thrive in the heat of a southern summer.
In the markets, soybean trade is impacted by weather chatter for the Midwest crop, as the catfish industry looks at increased processing and prices over fewer water acres.
In the feature segment, meet the point man for every soybean farmer in the United States. Danny Murphy of Kent, Mississippi, is the president of the American Soybean Association. He says there's a big challenge ahead as farmers must feed the rapidly growing world population.
There's a really amazing statistic that we're going to have to grow more food in the next 40 years than that we've grown since man's been on Earth. And to me, that's an amazing statistic that when you think about what's going to be required of us.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week.
Food prices are inching up in the United States, but not at the rate it was previously feared.
Leighton, the U.S. Department of Agriculture reports the Consumer Price Index for food rose 0.1% in July. Now, the food at home category was unchanged in July, but it is up 1% from a year earlier. The food away from home category was up 0.2% in July, and that's an overall increase of 2.1% from last year. Market to Market's Mike Pearson reports that last year's drought hasn't caused food prices to jump as much as many expected.
The Department of Agriculture's latest numbers indicate that the price of food will not increase as much as earlier projected. USDA expects food prices to rise only 1.5% to 2.5%, which is half of what government officials had previously predicted. USDA economist Ricky Volpe says a number of factors have contributed to the less than anticipated increase.
We were initially looking at 3 to 4% increase, which was above average. That was, before we knew that we were going to have these lower fuel prices and the strengthening U.S. dollar, the overall improving economy. We are still looking at some food prices that are going to go up a little bit more than average and some that will go up less than average. But on the whole, we're looking at moderate food price inflation for the year, which is good news, especially given the initial outlook we had when the drought broke in July and August of 2012.
One of the places last year's drought had a big impact was on the price of beef. Decreased corn and soybean yields led to higher grain prices. The higher feed costs forced farmers and ranchers to cull their herds, which created a short-term supply glut. But over time, the smaller supply has pushed prices higher at the meat counter. While beef prices won't be increasing as much as originally expected, the cost of beef will remain high.
We're now looking at beef prices to increase between 2 and 3% on the year, but I should note that many beef prices have reached record or near record levels across supermarkets in the U.S. So inflation for the beef category may be small in percentage terms, but it's not as if consumers are seeing any relief there.
Volpe says consumers can expect to see an increase of 2 to 3%, if not more, for eggs, as well as a 3 to 4% rise in the price of poultry. However, according to Volpe, consumers will see their dollar go further in the dairy aisle.
We were initially forecasting pretty strong price increases for the year for 2013, but it turns out that we saw most of the impacts of the drought at the tail end of 2012. So we're now on track for very moderate price increases for dairy for the foreseeable future.
To have a successful junior livestock showing program, it takes not only trained adults, but trained youth as well. Mississippi State University instructed 4-H and FFA youth this past summer at an annual livestock judging camp. MSU Animal and Dairy Sciences and the Extension Service educated youth and adult volunteers on judging cattle, sheep, goats, and hogs. The campers learned how to rank each set of animals and then how to verbally present their decisions. Farmweek's Amy Taylor reports.
As the livestock industry evolves, so do standards for defining the ideal market or breeding animal. At the 4-H and FFA Livestock Judging Camp, participants learned to rank animals by judging muscle mass, conformation, leanness, and structural soundness, then verbally present their rankings. Mississippi State University Extension Service beef cattle specialist Dr. Brandy Karish explains why these skills are important.
A lot of these kids, they're showing breeding heifers. Some of them have market steers that they'll have picked out here soon. Some of them will have hogs that they'll go on and pick out here soon. And they'll take some of these tools that they've learned here today and they'll use those to select their own animal. There are a few that are just looking for some ways to get involved in 4-H or FFA, and a livestock judging contest is a really good way for those kids to be part of a team and to be able to compete, and it's a good introduction into that competitive world.
Additionally, adult volunteers attended for the purpose of learning to teach livestock judging to youth. MSU Animal and Dairy Sciences livestock judging coach Brett Crow talks about the benefits of attending this type of camp.
Well, we're a lot more efficient today, and part of it is because of educational programs like this. We're more efficient with livestock production. We raise livestock now that take fewer days to get to market weight and go to slaughter, that make better use of feed resources, which are becoming quite expensive. We also have livestock that meet the consumer demands better, all because of educational programs like this. Some of these young people grow up and go and work away from the farm and a job in town, but there's not a job you can work where you don't have to make decisions and stand by them and communicate why you made those decisions with a logical thought process.
In addition, Crow says the Livestock Judging Camp is an excellent networking opportunity for young people with future career aspirations in the agriculture industry. From Mississippi State University, I'm Amy Taylor reporting.
If you're interested in taking part next year in Mississippi State University's Livestock Judging Camp, contact Brett Crow at 662-325-5208. We will have this information on our Farm Week website and Facebook page. You can also contact your county office of the MSU Extension Service. This past summer, a 3-day camp was held for ages 14 to 18, and a 1-day camp was held for adults and youth ages 9 to 13.
Do you think that your choices for summer color are limited once the temperatures heat up? In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman will show us how to make a color splash in the landscape with the Mississippi Medallion winner, SunPatiens.
When the summer temperatures are sweltering, gardeners still have the option for bright landscape color. Today I'm at Mississippi State University's Truck Crops Experiment Station looking at the 2011 Mississippi Medallion winner sizzling summer SunPatiens. SunPatiens are an improvement in New Guinea type impatiens that can be grown in the full sun. They bloom from the time they are planted in late April or May through the fall. In fact, they were 3 feet tall and covered with blooms at the Fall Flower and Garden Fest last October. SunPatiens seem to flaunt their brilliant flower colors. There are 15 selections of SunPatiens in 3 different growth categories: vigorous, compact, and spreading. Vigorous SunPatiens feature colors of variegated coral, lavender, magenta, orange, red, and white. These plants will fill in quickly, even in larger landscape beds. The Compact series has flower colors of blush pink, deep rose, coral, white, lilac, orange, and magenta. They have outstanding tight branching characteristics that guarantee a lot of color. The Spreading series flower colors come in variegated white and variegated salmon. The foliage is a beautiful creamy yellow with bright green edges. It's important to remember SunPatiens will require consistent moisture. Regular watering will keep these plants happy during the hottest temperatures. SunPatiens have the variety to meet most landscape and garden needs during our Mississippi summers. I'm Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Now, Leighton, Gary says that SunPatiens will tolerate some shade, but this tends to make them leggy, grow long stems, grow them in full sun for the best results. On the feature segment today, we'll profile Danny Murphy of Canton. He's the president of the American Soybean Association. But before we get to the markets today, Farm Week visited the first day of the Mississippi Cattle College on Wednesday. It was held near Pickens at the Kane Cattle Company. More than 100 showed up. A second session was held Thursday afternoon in Seminary. We'll have more from the Mississippi Cattle College on Farm Week in the coming weeks, including an interview with the president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. But Leighton, I got to say, it was like I was visiting at home with the relatives. There are a lot of Farm Week viewers among our cattlemen here.
And good attendance in general, looked like.
Good attendance. I also have something, they had cattle handling demonstration that was really, I thought, very interesting, where it talked about using the nature of the cattle. A lot of times we get too much in a hurry when we're trying to handle cattle, maybe use too many people. Anyway, we're going to have a story on that as well, which I thought it went really well. But we would thank everybody coming up and saying hello, because it makes us feel like at least somebody's watching.
That's right. Without you, we wouldn't be here.
We wouldn't be here. We always say that. It's time now for the markets with Leighton, though, and you say pond bank prices are up some and feed prices are less in the catfish business?
And of course the question, what's the longer term outlook for catfish and aquaculture? We will have some analysis in a moment from John Michael Riley coming up. Also ahead in the markets this week, a new crop purchased by China supports soybeans. OA Cleveland says that cotton may hang in the 81 to 89 cent range as optimism grows for beef demand in 2014. Wednesday morning, the USDA announced a market-supporting sale of U.S. soybeans to China. The Chinese are buying 2 cargoes of new crop beans, in fact, cargoes that total together 120,000 metric tons. Analyst Virgil Robinson of Market to Market says the weather conditions over Midwest soybeans is dominating the U.S. futures market as the number of bushels of old crop beans on hand continues to shrink.
The old crop supply, I think, is well documented. It's relatively tight, and there is obviously some concern about recent weather and its effect on yield, which I think was documented by the Pro Farmer Tour this week. You know, the wheat yield as well as the harvested acres, both those factors remain moving targets, as they do in corn.
Moving into the cotton market, analysts say the trade here has settled into a sideways pattern following the recent collapse of a big rally. Dones reports recent crop progress reports are certainly not helping the price outlook. Meanwhile, Dr. O.A. Cleveland says that cotton prices have returned to what he terms their familiar trading range. Cleveland thinks that cotton will likely remain within the 81 to 89 cent range for some time. Well, the month of September that we're embarking upon is National Honey Month, so let's see if you can answer our related trivia question about this commodity. How fast does a honeybee fly? Is the answer 5 miles per hour, 10 miles per hour, 15 miles per hour, or up to 20 miles per hour? I'll tell you at the end of the markets.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar and the rest of the markets. In the feature segment today, Danny Murphy of Mississippi is the president of the American Soybean Association. Find out how much food the world will need to grow in the next 40 years. The answer will surprise you.
Each year, many Mississippians are seriously injured or killed when farm tractors overturn. One cause of these accidents is improper hitching. If a tractor is hitched at any point above the drawbar, it can flip over backwards. Never hitch a tractor using the bar between the 3-point hitch upper and lower links or at the top link attachment point. The stationary drawbar is the only safe location for tractor hitching. A message from the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. The Mississippi Gourd Festival takes place Saturday and Sunday, September 21st and 22nd. Location is the Smith County Agricultural Complex in Raleigh. There will be lots of gourds on sale, both natural and handcrafted. There will be gourd crafting classes on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Admission is $2, children 12 and under free. A workshop will take place starting September 24th on helping Mississippi's farm and ranch women to plan the transfer of their operations from one generation to the next. The evening workshops will be held 5 consecutive Tuesdays starting September 24th. The cost is $25, which will include a light supper each week. The hours are 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. It will be offered in 4 locations: Collins, Indianola, Raymond, and Starkville. For more information, contact your county extension service office or look on the Farmweek website calendar and Facebook page. Go to our Farmweek webpage at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farmweek Snapshot.
A second major meat packer in the United States is raising concerns about that cattle feed additive known as Zilmax. Cargill made its announcement this week. The company says that in 1 month it will stop buying cattle that have been fed the growth promotant. Cargill is calling for more research to answer recently raised questions about Zilmax. Tyson Foods announced a similar decision earlier in August. Merck, the maker of Zilmax, has already temporarily pulled the product off the market. Analysts looking at the beef sector continue to speak about a tighter supply of cattle in the United States, especially once we get into the new year. Analyst Sue Martin thinks both the feeder and fat cattle markets will likely enjoy better demand if key indicators don't change by then.
I think we're going to see a demand for these feeders come into fall. So I look at the cattle market and we realize that at some point here, going beyond October, we'll probably have some pretty good numbers, I think, coming to market in October. But once we get past October, we're going to, as we go towards February and towards April, we're going to tighten our meat supply a little bit. And I think world demand's going to be good for it. And not to mention that if the economy is growing in the U.S., truly growing, and you have less people unemployed, and you have things percolating in Europe and over in China, demand for beef might be pretty darn good.
As we reported here last week, pond bank prices for United States catfish in July were up from a year ago. Now, there are fewer water acres devoted to fish production in the U.S. now. Extension Ag economist John Michael Riley joined me for a few minutes Thursday morning to discuss the outlook for catfish. John Michael, what kind of trend are we seeing as far as pond bank prices for catfish?
Well, they've, after struggling a little bit, they moved higher in 2010 and 11, up above $1, which was great for producers. And then that kind of, they pushed back from demand at retailers, at restaurants, and so it fell back into those norms of in the 70-cent range. We've seen them come back up a little bit, approach $1 at certain times, but definitely better than where we were at a year ago and even just a few months ago.
And of course, as far as the key input as far as catfish production, those feed ingredients, soybeans, corn, other items, that at least for a while was coming down, helping out some.
That's correct. We during the middle of the summer, we got a late start to our planting, which pushed prices higher than it looked like. Crops were looking good. Prices started moving lower. Since then, there's been a few crop tours out through the Midwest and the Corn Belt showing soybeans don't look quite as good as we had hoped. Corn still looks good, so it's occasionally rode soybeans coattails higher, but here lately a little bit lower for corn. Soybeans continuing to move higher, which is definitely going to put some poor pressure on soybean meal prices, which is a main ingredient for catfish feed.
Well, it's no secret, certainly, that water acres, the number of acres devoted to catfish production, not only in Mississippi, but in the United States, much less than it was, say, even 5 years ago.
That's true, and that's really what led to that spike in catfish prices was the fact that supply just got contracted so much, and so retailers were scrambling to find product, and that led to higher prices. Since then, again, mentioned demand kind of got some pushback there, but for the most part, we're continuing to see a contraction in water acres and thus supplies.
And we don't expect that to change as far as those number of water acres anytime soon.
Shouldn't, especially when you look at the fact that last year's feed prices were so high, and that's still those catfish are still in the water.
And this foreign competition question, that is still the hurdle that everybody's looking for an answer to.
It's an important one, and one that we will continue to follow. I think that there's some movement there, but not like what the industry would like to see.
Before our new feature story, let's check the trivia answer for this week. And the correct choice is C. Scientists say a honeybee can fly about 15 miles per hour.
The 2007 Census of Agriculture says more than 279,000 U.S. farms grew soybeans that year. The man in our feature segment is the point person for all of the nation's soybean growers. He's also a resident of Mississippi. Danny Murphy is the president of the American Soybean Association. Murphy says there are a lot of challenges facing U.S. farmers, including old locks on the Mississippi River and a world that's in need of an astounding amount of food. Farmweek's Zach Ashmore reports.
Danny Murphy has been farming in Canton, Mississippi since he was a boy. After graduating from Mississippi State University with a Bachelor's of Science degree in agronomy, he inherited his father's farming business, where he now operates a 1,500-acre farm that grows soybeans, corn, and winter wheat. He was recently elected president of the American Soybean Association. Mr. Murphy says that hard work is the key to success, and that the American farmer has a big responsibility.
I think today each U.S. farmer feeds more than 155 people, and and so it's just critical to supply the world that U.S. farmers continue to have the tools and the technology and the ability to compete on the world stage in the world market to provide the food and the feed that's necessary to feed this growing population that we're expected to reach 9 billion before long. There's a really amazing statistic that we're going to have to grow more food in the next 40 years than that we've grown since man's been on Earth. And to me, that's an amazing statistic that when you think about what's going to be required of us. And so it's, U.S. farmers, especially U.S. soybean farmers, look forward to that challenge. We're trying to grow yields, do it in a sustainable, environmentally friendly way, and so we're working really hard to accomplish that, and there's no doubt that we're going to have to accomplish that.
As the president of the American Soybean Association, Mr. Murphy has quite a few challenges ahead of him, which includes lobbying for legislation in the United States Congress to help his fellow producers.
Farm bill and crop insurance are two big issues that we'll be addressing as the new Congress comes back into session in January. Other issue that really needs to be addressed is infrastructure, especially our locks and dams on the Mississippi River and Ohio River. Some of those dams and locks are 50 years old and already many years past their design life expectancy, and so we need to figure out a way to get that funded and get those rebuilt so that we can continue to be the leading agricultural exporter. Research to keep us at the forefront of our agricultural production is also important. We've seen funding continue to decrease from Washington, and it's just if we're going to continue and be able to feed 9 billion people by 2050, we have to have the agricultural research to make sure that we develop the technology and the varieties that will help us get there.
Despite all of the tasks set before him, he still tries to keep his eyes on the big picture of modern farming. This includes new environmentally clean techniques to ensure the health and fertility of the land.
I think many consumers have an idealized version or their ideal idea of what farming should be as family farming, but and the reality is that commercial agriculture is family farming today. I think 97% of all farms are owned by families. And so first and foremost, the land is being taken care of by families that from generation to generation, we want to make sure that the land's better today than it was yesterday and better tomorrow. And so we're farming in a sustainable manner. We understand that needs to be done for the future. We are careful with the herbicides and pesticides that we apply, and we use in technology and genetically modified plants are really going to be the key to us being able to feed everyone in the United States and in the world too. And there's a lot of, sometimes they get a lot of conflicting reports about what maybe commercial agriculture does or doesn't do, or what genetically modified crops might, if they're really safe. And we need to understand that we are working hard to make sure that we do produce safe, wholesome food that meets their needs and do it in a really environmentally responsible, sustainable way.
With his many years of experience, Mr. Murphy is a prime example of a Mississippi farmer who has gained success and attempts to use that success to aid his fellow producers. From Canton, Mississippi, I'm Zach Ashmore reporting.
And you can watch this profile again on Danny Murphy on our Farm Week website, Facebook page, or YouTube. And if you want to, give our Facebook page a try and like us, and we promise not to fill up your Facebook page. One thing I might mention is that, you know, Mississippi is not a major player in terms of soybean acreage, but we have had 6 presidents now from Mississippi have been president of the American Soybean Association. So when it comes to having influence on soybean policy, Mississippi is definitely there. Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, September is National Honey Month.
We'll visit 2 Mississippi honey operations, Prairie Blossom Bee Farm of Mayhew and Broke Tea Honey of Philadelphia. If you learn anything from this story, you'll see that apiary owners are as busy as the bees they keep.
In Southern Gardening, see how one homeowner has integrated his farm equipment collection into his landscape. For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.